Hi there, welcome to this second video of our FinXL training series. As a recap, the first video went through the basics of FinXL, downloading it, navigating yourself through it, um, also looking at pulling out basic bits of fund information on a series of funds. This one is going to be focused on sucking out performance information on a series of funds, maybe some of the other reports as well, ratios, pulling out fund manager information. That they're fairly self-explanatory, so we'll cover those off at the very end. But a lot of people, when they use FinXL, are very much interested in taking fund information from the database and populating it in these large worksheets. So to start, I've set up a work sheet here that has two sectors smashed together. I've got the North American sector and the North American smaller company sector. There's all the codes, there's all the fund names. Now I want to start creating large performance tables, which are probably going to be lots and lots of columns. So I've also put a split in here as well, so that when I start moving on the right hand side, those first three columns are frozen in time. Let's just leave that there. So to start with, there's a couple of reports to be mindful of when you're trying to pull out performance information. If I come back to the FinXL tab and add new report, you've got date list and you've got performance table. You can just go straight into performance table and start sucking out all these different performance criteria over different periods. Date list just simply allows you to very quickly put in dates. You could, rather than having to manually type it out or using Excel formula, it's basically a shortcut. So let's just experiment with that initially to show you some of the different options you've got here. As always, what do you want it to be called? Where's the origin of the report? It's going to be D1. Let's start with something really simple. I'm going to do monthly date series, and there's going to be 12 of them. I'll come on to offsets in a minute. And if I click on run, I'm sure you can pretty much guess what's going to happen. I'm going to get 12 monthly periods from the last one, as in 31st of 7th and 6th and 5th and 4th, etc. If I flip that to yearly over 5, that will then simply reduce that down to 5 yearly chunks. Now, the other neat thing I can include very quickly are quartile ranks, absolute ranks, quintile, decile, etc. Because when I create this performance table, I might want those ranks to appear as well. And again, I could go on there and manually type it in. But there's a bit of a shortcut over here under ranking headers. In addition to the dates that have just appeared, I also want the absolute rank. Where is that fund positioned within all of the funds within the table or against the sector? We'll explore those two options in a minute. How many funds are we looking at in total, either based on the sector or based on how many funds in the table? And I'll also pull out the quartile. But again, you can do quintile, decile, and percentile. And if I click on run, you'll see that at the very top. In between the two dates, they now just suddenly appear: rank, total, and quartile. Now, offsets are quite useful because you can create rolling periods. So I want to go back 5 years, but five rolling yearly periods going back a year each time. So if you always remember that 0 is the most recent time period, whether you're doing month, week, year. So 0 would be pretty much what I've got there at the moment, but then go back 5 years on top of that, and I could keep going. I could add in as many offsets as I like. But if I now click on run, you'll see I'll have two dates, and now all of a sudden, as if by magic, in one fell swoop, I've got a start date and an end date. 5 years from 2017 to 2022, 2016 to 2021. So they kind of overlap. That's why I say they're rolling periods. So as I said, there will be nothing stopping me just manually typing all of that in, but using the date list is clearly a lot quicker. Now I've got my headers of that table sorted. Now I want to go and grab all of that performance table and fill in all this white space on the right hand side. So if I go into add new report, go down to performance table, and again, I want this to be called performance table. I'm happy for the report origin to be that field there. What are the codes I want to use? I want to use these ones. So go again, control shift and down. What are the start dates? Are these ones here? And if you include rank, total, and quartile, that will be included on the table. And end dates, I've got 5 of those as well. So let's control shift right. And I'll mess around with some of the other options in a minute to show you what that does. And then hopefully within not too many seconds, that will populate all of these empty cells with fresh data coming from our database. There we go. Let's just move along a bit. So just to quickly explain the rank total and quartile, total is how many funds are currently being analyzed. There's 78 of them with performance information over that particular period. So 78 in total over the in the table. This particular fund we're looking at here, the Aberdeen American, it's position 36. So that performance figure there means it's the 36th best fund out of the 78, and that means it's quartile 2. So it's kind of in that kind of top 50% of the funds in that particular sector. Now, on the right-hand side, you can flip the logic. So actually, I'm looking at two sectors here, North American and North American smaller companies. So I want it to rank the fund based on its sector position, not just how many funds I've got in the table. And this, of course, is particularly relevant if I'm looking at lots and lots of different funds. I could theoretically be looking at 5,000 different rows of data here, all in different sectors. And I want these performance figures to be relevant against the sector position, not all the funds in the table. So on the right-hand side, you've got ranking group. Within table is a default. I'm looking at UK unit trust and OIC funds here. So I can say, no, rank them based on their unit trust and OIC sector position. And if you just focus on the top one there, you should see these figures changing, probably not drastically. Give that a few seconds because the smaller company sector is quite small. There we go. So there are now 71 funds being analysed because there's 71 North American funds, and you can see there's 7 North American smaller companies. And this particular fund is the third best fund out of the 7, and it means it's second quartile. So now all of that data in a very short period of time has now been automatically changed, and is now showing me the position against its sector. Now, there's nothing stopping you starting to add conditional formatting. So for stuff like quartiles, I could do stuff like that and look at, first, second, third, fourth. You can even add your own color schemes as well, so you can dictate what the colors are like if you just right click on it and customize. More rules there. So that's also this is sucking out percentages on 7 or 8 different decimal places. So again, you can change the formatting to only do 2. And as I kind of stressed in the first video, if I then were to update all this data by hitting FinXL and refresh, it does recognize that you've changed the formatting of each cell, and the formatting will stay as is, and all the data will be sucked in and replaced underneath it. So that's a table using the date list fields at the very top. But as I said, you can manually put in fields of data at the top as well. So this, I suppose, the next example will be quite relevant for if you want that data to be updated regularly. Now, clearly, the table I just created there, a lot of these figures are going to be completely static. If I updated the table tomorrow, well, guess what? The performance is exactly the same because we haven't moved on. 2013 to 2018. That's going to make no difference whatsoever how far in the future we move, and therefore the total and the quartile is going to be the same regardless of how often I hit that refresh button. But what about if I'm pulling out performance figures that I do want to refresh update every day? I'm looking at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year performance figures, and clearly that is going to change every single day as we nudge ahead. But equally, I want the entire period to move forward a day. I don't want to say start 5 years ago and then every single day just gets one day further along. So I'll give you another example. I'm going to say 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year. So they're my headers. I don't need to bother with the date list report anymore. And I want a brand new report to live here. So we're going to do an add new report, and I want to create a brand new performance table. Origin, their report name is going to be performance table 1. What are the codes? It's exactly the same as before. So same codes. What are the start dates? Now, whereas before I just highlighted the date list fields that I quickly used as a shortcut, but you have your own shortcuts in analytics that you can use. So as a starter for 10, you can just simply say -5 year is a start date. So that's clearly going to be 5 years ago, -3 year. I've done that the wrong way around, haven't I? Let's do that again. It's going to be -1 year, -3 years, and -5 years. When's the end date? If you just leave that blank, it's always going to be the last price, basically day end. So if I click on run, I'll mess around with some of the other options in a minute to show what they do. Give that a couple of seconds. And that would now give me kind of dynamically updatable data so that every single time I come in every single day and hit a refresh button, all of that will automatically update. And again, the decimal places, actually, let's do performance as percentage first. Let's just run that again. Rather than raw performance, let's just ask that as a percentage, and then I'll take away, give that a few seconds. Good, and then I'll just format these cells, make it look a bit neater. That's better. Okay, so that's, as I said, that's dynamic data now. So every single time I come in and every day I come in and hit refresh, that's all going to be updated because it's going to run the same query again. It's going to recognize that I've asked it every single time I hit refresh to go back a year and pull it until current day. Now, what about if you don't want it to go to current day? What about if you wanted to do month end, year end, weekend? Well, the good news, I'll make sure these are in the description notes of the YouTube video when we upload it. You have again got very simple shortcuts. ME is month end, D is day end, Y is year end. I'm sure you get the point. So on the start date, I could say, no, I don't want it to go back at last year. I want it to do month end, then minus 1 year. Then I want month end minus 3 years, and then my eyesight's terrible. Month end minus 5. That's correct. And then end date, I just want to do. You don't have to do ME, comma ME, comma ME. You just put ME, and that will recognize it wants all of that as month end. And just give it a few seconds. And that will then change it all to month-end data. There we go. And again, because I changed the formatting, the background to only be 2 decimal places, even though it's refreshed the table again, it's remembered the formatting and stuck with that. A couple of other things to bear in mind as well over on the right-hand side over here. You can obviously change the currency if need be. You can also show it in annualized format as well. Unlike analytics, we've got 2 different types of annualized calculations. You've got compound and you've got simple. See an example. Let's say this one, let's say that was over 4 years. If you did a simple annualized rate, that's just going to simply say it's done 10% a year over 4 years. Okay, 10% plus 10% plus 10% plus 10% is 40. That's a simple calculation. But in investment world, that's not true. Obviously, 10% a year over 4 years isn't 40% because of the compounding nature. So that's why you can do on annualize, I want to do a compound annualize and actually show the true compounding annualized rate over 1, 3, and 5 years. So they're the 2 different types of performance tables you can run. I suppose the last thing you might want to add now is if I add a filter to that. There we go. And now very quickly, and again, this is not using a huge amount of data here, but now very quickly I can start filtering this enormous great workbook, and I can very quickly look at North American smaller companies, all the 7 or 8 funds, etc., that are currently showing performance figures over those different time periods. The other things to bear in mind as well, to show you some of these other reports very quickly, on the left-hand side under FinXL, under new report, you've also got ratio tables. Again, fairly self-explanatory. You're just basically picking out what ratios do you want the table to pull out. So again, I've got however many funds you want the data to be sucked out with. I can then select a number of different ratios. Let's just do downside risk as well. On the amount of codes on the left-hand side. Now, unlike performance, which is a bit of an absolute metric because you're not really comparing it and making it relative to anything else, a lot of those ratios you pull out, notably stuff like beta and alpha, etc., will be calculating the asset or the fund based on a particular benchmark. So you dictate what that benchmark is. So as I explained in the first video of this series, everything on the database has a code. Most of it will be city codes, but sectors, indices, portfolios have a reference code. So put in the reference code of what you want the ratios to be calculated against. Some of those ratios, notably Sharp, will need a risk-free rate as well. So what's the kind of risk-free cash rate? So you can dictate that. And again, start date, end date. Same with performance. I missed that off, but you don't have to do total return all the time. You can do gross return. You've got NAV as well when it comes to the performance of funds, etc. And again, you can use your imagination here. I don't really need to run that off in this video, but you can then suck out a load of ratio data on top of all the performance data you've created. Another table that's probably worthwhile just quickly pointing out here rather than having to do a completely separate video on is fund manager details. And it says it is exactly what it says. if you look at the different fields in which you can pull out, it's the fund manager person. What's their name? What's their biography? How long have they been managing that fund for, etc. Again, if you think of analytics world, you can go into a fund fact sheet, click on a fund manager, and it pulls up a load of information on them. All of those different fields on that fact sheet are in our database. You can pull out any specific field as a completely separate report. Some more information at fund level you might want to pull out is EMT data. So again, if you think of analytics, well, when you go into a fund fact sheet and look at all the MiFID fields of data we now database, analytics it's quite tricky in analytics to get that out of analytics. You can do so very easily with FinXL. And again, if you look at all the different fields of data, we've just added, for example, the assessment of value fields that the fund providers are now disclosing. So that's all of the kind of the MiFID, EMT, ET, all the different acronyms we use, all of those fields that we're databasing based on EMT data are now available for you to use as headings and pull out on a list of whatever funds you've got on the left-hand side. And one final one on the left-hand side is full portfolio fields. You can only do one code at a time. You wouldn't be able to do this en masse. But again, keep on referring back to analytics. I suspect people watching this, their knowledge of analytics would possibly be better than FinXL. Think of analytics, you can get the full portfolio holdings of every single fund, or those that are disclosing it. So in FinXL, the same. You can come in here, pop a code in, a city code. It does only work for funds. You can't do this on portfolios. And then you can ask it what fields of data do you want to suck out. I want the ISIN code of every single holding, what the weight is, what the value is, what the name is, etc. Now, some of the data, when a provider provides us with full portfolio holdings, and just a quick summary, if I did this on code, I won't do this now, but if I did this on P12, this is the Invesco Perpetual High Income Fund. Maybe that fund invests in 300 different items, some stocks, some bonds, etc. I want to look at all of those 300 lines of stock, but when I'm looking at those 300 lines of stock, again, what is it I actually want to look at? Well, I want to look at the name of the stock, what the ISIN code is of that stock. It could be Google and Meta, etc. And again, the percentage weighting they hold in that particular line of stock. And if you click on run, it does take a little while because it's kind of reaching into the inside of our database and then extracting that and putting it into FinXL for you. And because a lot of that data is quite sensitive, you'll find a lot of it might be embargoed. So there will be different embargoes placed on different full portfolio holdings data. So whereas we try and collect the most up-to-date data possible, sometimes the provider will embargo it and say, well, we're only allowed to publish it once it's 3 months old, 4 months old, 6 months old, etc. So here you can actually say, well, if you leave that blank, it's going to try and pull out most recent, but you can actually specify how many months back you want to go if you did want to go back past the last update. So added together with the first video, we went through pulling out bits of fund information, ratings, fund size, yield, etc. I'm hoping you're getting a picture of in your head now that there is no limit here. There's no restriction. You can simply pull out whatever fund you like or whatever range of funds you want up against whatever data fields and create these large kind of worksheets of data that are dynamically updating. Every single time you come in, you just got to hit that refresh button. And all of that data that you've already set up will come through fresh. So that's it for the second video. The third video, we've only got a couple of other reports to cover off. We'll have a look at fund breakdown, how you suck out asset splits, sector split, regional split of a range of funds. And we'll also start looking at series returns as well. How do I take the kind of daily return, monthly return series, weekly return series of a particular fund? And that's relevant if you wanted to start using the full force of Excel to start creating graphics, to create charts, to create pie charts, etc., to maybe start populating fact sheets or dashboards. So we'll get on to that on the third video. Thanks for watching.